Hello everybody, Thomas Fleming here again. It's cool today. I guess we either get rain or we get cool. Well, I don't mind rain occasionally, but we do need some clear skies, so I guess we have to deal with cool. This is only January. February is the cold month. That's all right. Like I said, I sleep very warm. When I get out in the cold, it's just dealing with it. It depends on what I'm going to do. Sitting in cold is the hardest thing to do. I can go for a hike and I can keep myself warm. This jacket is open, but it could be zipped up. I can sit here like this, pull my... So, I come equipped with the right resources. That's the key. Be prepared. Okay, well, we're going to be making ourselves a horror movie. One that this world will be frightened of eventually. Yeah, I think if you just read them the script, they'd laugh. Most of us have read the script, a few people, and they've laughed at it. Because they have no experience with the author. But we know who the author is. And we know that he always does what he says he's going to do. We have the script. It's pulled from a number of different places, experiences. God always pulls from experiences. The experiences of Ezekiel and Daniel and a few other places. One of the big things about doing a horror movie is to know how to scare your audience by catching them a combination of knowing what's going to happen, but then not quite getting what's going to happen. Now, God always warns the people that he's going to scare. Now, he doesn't scare. He lets the world take over. He lets Satan do a little bit of his stuff. The bottom line is, he's got tools to do things that he won't do. He wanted to scare Nineveh. So he got one of his servants, who's been pretty good up to this point, delivering messages. And he wanted to send him over to Nineveh to warn him. But his servant took it under his own idea that, well, they deserve to be scared. So God kept pestering him and he wouldn't go. He finally just took off and ran away. So God turned the tables on him and scared him. You either deliver the message or you become the message. I'd imagine spending a few hours in the belly of a whale would scare most people. It worked for Jonah. And he went and delivered the message. Reluctantly, but he did. And Nineveh repented for a little while. But as most actors in the Bible, a little while seems to be the standard thing. Israel would be scared, they'd behave, and then they'd forget. Time heals all wounds, and that's exactly the way people are. You don't stay on top of it, they'll forget. I forget. But scaring people by letting them know you're coming. God likes to sound trumpets to announce his arrival. That scares people. The sound of something can actually create more fear than the item itself. A good example of that is the movie Jaws. They had a whole script written out where they were going to have this actor come in portraying a shark. His name was Bruce. And yes, that was the name of the shark. And they had him dressed up in different looks for different scenes. Some would be he's traveling level, some he's breaching the water, some he's got his mouth chomping down. Every one of these animatronics was built and shipped to the location without being tested. Lesson number 1. They got there, the foam soaked up the water and they were too heavy or they sank, one or the other. You couldn't move them because they were so heavy, or they just plain sank. They didn't have a star. So what do? Or you put a genius in charge, and that's exactly what he was able to do. Put his mind to work and go, what can we do? We don't have our star. Well, let's announce the star, but don't show him. Na-na, 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 na-na. And every time you heard that, you know Bruce was coming. We won't use his name Bruce anymore because it takes away some of the effect. But the bottom line was that every time they heard that sound, they knew that there was a deadly shark approaching. Little Pavlov in the movie theater. I bet they ate more popcorn during those scenes. And some of the fright, even in the movie, was real. The girl on the beach that ran out into the water. When the stunt went off and some of her screaming was real, she was really struggling and in trouble. But they didn't know it initially, and it looked good on camera, so it worked. That's what happens when you have a young director who doesn't have the experience to know that sometimes things go wrong. Well, God's a well experienced director, and he's going to take care of everything. But they pulled that movie together very easily, and you know that there's so much of, the Kevin Bacon linkage that you do when you try to connect yourself to Kevin Bacon. I don't know if you've ever done that or not, but I'm sure you've seen it. Well, the ship captain, Quinn, was the character's name, was played by a longtime character actor, Robert Shaw. And our director, George Lucas, was a movie buff. I forget the name of the movie, but they filmed this in the 70s, so in 30 years earlier to that, Robert Shaw, a young Robert Shaw, was in a movie where he was playing a deckhand or a member of a crew on a ship. And he sang his infamous song in that old movie, "Farewell and adieu, my fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain." He had a little guitar and he sang that in the movie, in this old black and white movie. And Lucas had seen that. Robert Shaw also acted in a movie that would be something that we can relate to a little bit more, A Man for All Seasons. That was about King James and his wish to have more power, take some power away from the church. That was the reason that he had the King James Bible written. He commissioned it in 1604 and it was finished in 1611. They took out some books that were giving too much power to the church, and they being Protestants and the like, they didn't really like to elevate Mary the way the other church, the Anglican Church, did. So they took out the Gospel of James. Mary having other children? Nah, blasphemy. They left in the epistle or the letter of James, because it's really not definitive that James wrote that letter. But the gospel they knew that he wrote, so they took it out. There's other things. It's called the Apocrypha, and the Catholic Church still uses it. And it's out there. You can find it. Some of it's acceptable for canon, some of it's not. The stories of Hanukkah are in those same kind of books. They're good stories, but they're not, quote, thought to be inspired by God. So they're not included. But they scared the audience with a little classical music. And it worked. God's going to do the same thing. And again, all the things that are going to happen in this little horror show are not going to be hitting with the worst. You don't do that in the beginning, and everything is not as important after that. You ramp up your horror. We didn't actually see the shark until later on, when the line from Brody, when he comes back into the ship's helm with his ad lib, you're going to need a bigger boat. Well, they were using that phrase throughout the production. The boat that they were going after the shark in obviously was too small, but they had other boats that they took out that had craft services and other things on them, because they're out in the ocean. They got to have everything still there, and they weren't big enough. So they would jokingly go, when they needed more equipment or they needed more food or whatever, you're going to need a bigger boat. They've been saying that through the production. So it's not just Roy Snyder's brilliant idea to throw that in. They were using it, so he just grabbed it and put it in there. And it's a brilliant comment at that time. So you never know what you're going to run into. You got to be ready at all times. As Christians, we can be ready because we know, one, we're not going to be in all this horror movie that's being made. We're going to come in with everybody, and then we're going to just climb out of the top of the building and we'll be out of there. And everybody else will be in the theater ready to watch this. Popcorn in hand. They're excited. They're not afraid of anything. They've been taught to not worry about anything. And all the stuff going on in the world, don't worry about it. What else do I have here? When you make a horror film, you build up the anticipation. And God's going to use some of this himself. You build up the audience to anticipate something imminently happening. And then you just stop the build-up and nothing happens. It's like, oh, it missed us. We're not going to have a problem. Then you build it up again. Oh my God, it's coming at us. Oh, no, never mind. False alarm again. If you do that enough, people will just go, oh, look at that big monster coming right at us. I'm not even going to react. I'm getting tired of reacting. And then you get clobbered. That's how when you're writing a script for something like a horror show, you do that. Depending on the gruesome factor of the horror show, I do like horror movies. Like The Thing. I like that kind of stuff, the old style, where you don't have to show every internal organ exposed on the outside. Where, and back in those days, the shower scene in Psycho was extremely frightening. And they really couldn't go and throw blood all over the place. It looked like that was blood, but it wasn't. They didn't have the chemicals to make the fake blood like they do now. They used chocolate syrup. But in black and white, it looked like blood. I've worked on The Walking Dead, and I've seen so much fake blood that I'm not impressed by it, unfortunately. You get tainted to stuff. You get adjusted to it. When you get to see behind the scenes, you know how things really work. It's not frightening when you see it on the screen. And that's the way we need to be. We need to not be frightened when we start seeing some of these things happen. The food prices are going to go up. Are they going to go to the point where Christians are going to starve to death? No. I don't think anybody is going to starve to death while the Christians are still here. Now, individuals, maybe. Individuals can make mistakes. They often do. But as a collective group, we're still the restrainer. It's not going to happen that way. God's here to protect us, and he will stay there through the entire thing. Nothing surprises God. You can't scare God. Satan can scare us because we don't keep our eyes on God. But they've learned how to make these. A number of my productions were low-budget scare movies. A couple of them were very well written. And that's the key with anything in the way of a movie or a film or TV show. If it's well written, then we're okay. And comedy is my first choice, but I like sci-fi, as you know from my Star Trek. And we're still doing some more of that. The guy that's editing our last Star Trek film keeps putting up pieces here and there. You can see stills every once in a while on my Facebook page. You can't see him because I don't let anybody on there. But if you were to find him, he posts them under his name, Nature's Hunger on Facebook. But you film some of these things on a green screen. You have no idea what it's going to look like. And then you see the final product, and it's amazing. They did the same thing with the, Avengers movies. Some of it's practical, but the dangerous stuff is not. Dangerous is green screen and wires and all the stuff. They can do all kinds of tricks today that they could never do before. Back in the old black and white days, they'd have to find ways and camera angles to make things happen. You watch some of the old Charlie Chaplin movies or the Lloyd Wright movies back then, the old black and white comedy guys. They did a lot of things that were just the proper angle, and you couldn't tell. A fight is basically, if you got amateurs fighting, you're obviously going to rehearse. But you don't hit anybody. You shouldn't hit anybody. If you get carried up into the fight and you still hit somebody, well, hopefully you've got people tough enough to handle it. But you don't. If I was going to shoot somebody hitting me, an arm would come by, and I'd go like that. Never came near me, like out here. It's all angle. It looks like it, because we can't see depth of field in, most videos. It's just knowing how to present it. Now, God, he is going to give a lot of what we call practical effects. They're real. Absolutely real. No fake photography. People are going to die. It is going to be a horror movie once it starts. And the people that are, unfortunately, more people are going to fail to accept Christ's free offer than accept it. But by continuing to make the horror movie worse, people that are destined to be in heaven are going to speak up. Say, God, I don't want to be part of this. I'm sorry. Repent, accept Christ, and they don't have to go through as much of it. Remember, we got 3 raptures. The big one with everybody all at once going, and then there's two more. There's one in the middle before the abomination, and then there's one at the end, so that those people that made it through can also come back with Christ when he's riding back in for the second coming. I may still continue teaching Revelation, but my heart's not in it. There's really no need for anybody to go through all that stuff. Get the first rapture, get out. I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to get our Bible primers and start studying how to be leaders. When we come back, we're going to rule with Christ with an iron fist. The people that make it through are going to go into the millennium. And we're going to go into the millennium as joint caretakers of the people. Hopefully we've learned something. The advantage that we're going to have over them, new bodies. We will be changed in an instant. I'm anxious to have a new body. My question is, what's the day-to-day life going to be like? In the beginning, the people that made it, not the Christians, but the people that made it, found a way to survive. And out of that group, there will be those that will still have their name in the book of life. Anytime this stuff continues on, God is doing it for somebody. He's doing it for everybody, but he knows that not everybody. If everybody was never destined to go to heaven, he'd stop right there, kill them all off and go. Or have the white judgment seat. Every time we spend more time down here, there are souls to be saved. That's the only reason we're here now. We've accepted Christ. And this is the last generation. So there's no reason for us to stay here except for the fact that there's still souls to save. You've got to get out there and find them. Now, since it's not our job to save people, it's only our job to be a messenger. Like Jonah, don't run. God will find you. And nobody wants to wake up in the belly of a whale. But don't worry. He was a little bit, Jonah was a little bit afraid for his life going into this city, but he also thought they deserved it. God will deal with both. You give the message out, and if they react right, they're saved, and they bought themselves some time. And Jonah was safe. We didn't hear much after what happened with him, because that was the big story of his life, getting swallowed by a whale because he wouldn't do what God wanted. And he knew he was capable of doing it. God did. Jonah's resentment for Nineveh was more of a factor than his fear. So, things are going to kick off soon on earth. I've been saying that for some time, but they've been moving slower than I thought they would. But we're 2023, the 30-20 agenda, reverse the numbers, is 7 years away. Do you see how that fits? So this year they're going to start things. So we need to be ready. We need to be telling people. And at the same time, we need to be ready. Don't let your guard down. And be ready to talk to people wherever you meet them. Your message may fall on rocky soil. You don't know. You don't have any control of that. You can always tell God, I'll talk to anybody you send to me. Maybe that person won't be saved, but maybe they might tell somebody else. Guess what? Some Jesus freak came up and told me that I need to accept Jesus. The person they tell that to may be struggling with that. and think that's a message. You don't know. You have no control. Let God do the planning. He's a better writer than we could ever be. The Bible is so well knitted together. All right. I've got a few days of cold coming up. I may have to do more of my filming in the afternoon. Wait until the temperatures warm up. Sitting out here in the morning with my gloves on is not any fun. Sitting in my tent with it raining is not any fun. But most of the time it's not like that. But you have to take some of the bad with the good. God wants everybody saved, and He needs us to help. Okay. I don't remember the rest of the lyrics for that song. I guess I have to look it up. There's actually a full song. I at one point in time, back when Jaws was out for a while, because they didn't have internet back then, when it got out, I looked the song up, and you can find these. If you look up sea shanties and things like that, you can find your old pirate songs and things like that. I used to have friends that would dress up as pirates, and I was one of them. And we'd go to different places, and they'd sit around and drink beer, and they'd sing sea shanties. Say that 10 times fast. Some of them were pretty good. I've never been that good at singing. I just make a joyful noise. All right. Don't give up. If you're struggling, ask God to help you work through whatever you're dealing with. We've had some people that have been ill. I've got some people that I'm in my friends area of my Facebook that are dealing with some issues. People are dying. If they're Christians, be happy for them, because they're getting out early. At this point in time, any Christian who dies is now going to be with the Lord. And we'll be with them. We'll see Him. So don't worry about it. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless. Kind of hard to see, but there is a deer in the campsite next to me. Right in the middle.